We moved to our new location where we are now, Tedderfield Air Park in the south of Johannesburg. The aeroplane having proven itself to us, employed a whole bunch of employees, and got into production with what was now, because it flew so well, at 920 kilograms, both a 600 kilogram light sport aircraft and a 700 kilogram light aircraft, which can be built here in Australia. We also commenced developing a four-seater, which had the 914 UL turbocharged engine, 800 millimeter extended fuselage, and each of the wings pushed out also about 400 millimeters. We decided to bring the first one to Oshkosh, so we built it under incredible time pressure. This was in 2011. If you look closely at this photograph, there are actually 11 people working on this aeroplane. We did get it to fly just before Oshkosh arrived, but our Civil Aviation Authority in South Africa would not allow us to take it until it had flown for 40 hours. And in fact, it was a kind of a blessing in disguise, which you could blame on the Aviation Authority. So what we did is, a month later, we flew around the world in the other direction. You know, I think one of the elements of our business is that all of the senior members are pilots, and our engineers are pilots. And we fly, you know, South Africa is in many respects quite like America. It's a frontier nation. People use aircraft. Our roads are bad, your roads are great. But we fly our families around and we travel in aeroplanes. And you know, if the people who determine the design are themselves people who use aircraft on a daily basis for functional reasons, you tend to end up with a better set of decisions. This was the route we did the second time around the world in our four-seater, just after Oshkosh, leaving Johannesburg. Mike and I had flown around the world in 2009. This was 2011. Jean Dersonville, who many of you know, had joined us as a partner in the business. And we thought to give Jean the opportunity to fly around the world. So he flew the whole way around. I flew with him from Johannesburg going east to Los Angeles, and Mike flew with him from Los Angeles back to Johannesburg. This was a failure we had along the way. One of the useful things about Jean is that he's a reasonably tiny chap. You can fit him underneath the instrument panel during flight, where you can fix stuff as you go. Also absolutely incredibly competent. This is the tough time we had in Thailand. We wanted to go up through Japan, the Bering Straits, but when we arrived in Taiwan, the Japanese just said, you may not bring a prototype, it was our first Taiwan aeroplane, non-certified aeroplane to Japan. So we had to change our routing at the last minute, and the only way we could do it was to go into the headwinds across the Central Pacific, from Taiwan to Guam, which is essentially America in the kind of West Pacific, to the Marshall Islands, and then on to Hawaii. So if you want to buy a jerry can, Taiwan's not a bad place to buy plastic goods, and we bought 250 liters worth of jerry cans from a kind of hardware store in Taiwan, threw them in the back of the aeroplane, and rigged up so that we could make these extremely long legs across the Pacific, so we could siphon fuel from the jerry cans into the wing tanks during flight. We had another quite funny little event. We were unable to get permission to fly over Indonesia from Thailand. So Jean and I ended up spending 5 days in Thailand, kind of waiting to try and get Indonesian permission. But we actually didn't end up flying through Indonesia anyway. We filed the flight plan through Indonesia, turned off the transponder, and flew through Vietnamese and South China Sea airspace. Arrived in Taiwan at the huge Taoyuan airport, and as we taxied on there, Jean was the was flying the aircraft, and I was the only one with an IF rating, so I was on the flight plan as the pilot in command. Our agreement was that we swap every single flight, and he went about 5 yards down the wrong taxiway, while at least 200 yards off the runway, while a 737 was rolling down the runway. They don't normally have light aircraft, so ATC stopped the 737, which promptly had a puncture. And anyway, we got off the airfield, got to our hotel. When we arrived at our hotel, we noticed there was a whole crowd watching television. And as we walked up there to see what was going on, we saw that it was us on the television. Entire one, not a great way to arrive. Anyway, we had some pretty awful weather. Developed on the flight from Taiwan to Guam a technique where in the storms over the Pacific we would descend and fly 500 foot in the kind of dissipating part right through the night, because all of the legs were more than 12 hours, and we wanted that it took between 16 and 24 hours, and we wanted to land and take off in the light. Only way to achieve that was to fly right through the night. So it was pitch black, 500 foot over the ocean through the absolute pouring rain. Nice to see sunrise after that. That was our arrival in Guam, where we heard that they had the worst weather that one of their pilots had in 18 months. Flying onto the Marshall Islands, most of the water is collected there from runoff on the runway. And this is filling up with 83 octane petrol from the local gas station in the Marshall Islands. This is critical last minute admin by Jean. This is just a fun photo for me, because it's on the flight from the Marshall Islands to Hawaii, and it's crossing the international date line. And 2 years before, I crossed it going the other way, where we'd taken off on a Monday and landed on a Wednesday. And I worked out, as I was filming the sunset over there, that on this occasion, we took off on a particular day of the week, flew for 22 hours, and then landed 2 hours before we took off. So we stole the day back. I also worked out that in this aeroplane, if we'd been going in the other direction and we'd taken off just before midnight, we could have taken off on a Monday and landed on a Thursday. We didn't get a great welcome from the FAA when we arrived in Hawaii, and we discovered that even below 7,000 feet, we understood that below 7,000 feet over the Pacific Ocean, it was a G-class airspace. Turned out to be A-class airspace, and so we were arrested. There were two groups of people, one with those lovely Hawaiian necklaces, bottles of champagne, and then the FAA with handcuffs and charge sheets. And ultimately they were quite kind to us. We were in A-class airspace without two-way comms, and they agreed just to arrest the aircraft, and we could go and stay in our hotel. But we couldn't leave until the aircraft had an HF radio. And it took us 2 days to find an HF radio, which we could rent from some local guy, install it in the aeroplane, continue our flight to California. The FAA actually really treated us quite well. They don't realize that the post doesn't work in South Africa. And 2 years later, I received a letter from the FAA in my hometown in Johannesburg, which said that I had a charge against me for breaching A-class airspace, in that I did near Majuro Atoll on a particular day, fly in A-class airspace without two-way communications, and that after much consideration the FAA decided not to take the matter any further, but I was expected not to do the same thing ever again, which was really quite sweet of them. When we arrived at the coastline in California, just north of Los Angeles, Matt Lipnitsky was a Christian Eagle, met us in the air because we didn't know how to fly across LA with the airspace there. And he had Mike Blythe, who was taking over from me. Now it's Mike meeting Jean. And essentially, because this aeroplane had flown so well at long 18 to 22 hour legs from Taiwan to Los Angeles, Mike had worked out that it was possible to put bigger tanks into the back of the aircraft, and with a little 1300cc 914 UL engine to do one long death-defying flight from Rio de Janeiro to Cape Town. A flight that in the absence of wind would have taken 33 hours, but with the expected tailwind could be done in about 27 hours. And he put enough fuel in for the aircraft to fly for 28 and a half hours. So he met Jean, in went the tanks, they flew down across the Panama Canal into Colombia, where they were searched at length. I don't know why anybody wanted to take drugs into Colombia. Flying over the Andes in South America, across the Amazon, with the HF radio, of course, into Rio. There's quite a lovely little short 7-minute film that tells something about this journey as well. I think it's going to take too long if I show you now. That last leg over there ultimately took 27 and a half hours with a 60-knot tailwind for some of the way. They required a 20-knot tailwind directly from behind, from the moment of takeoff until the moment of landing, in order to make it all the way to Cape Town. These were Jean and my calculations of how much runway to use. And just at the end, another 40 litres of gas on Jean's lap. This is something that you do not want to see on your EFIS. The distance, 3,206 nautical miles, and your range at the current speed, only 2,782 nautical miles. Endurance, 26 hours. Estimated elapsed time, 30 hours. But of course the wind got stronger, they are very reliable, and the aeroplane got lighter. No runways at all to land between Rio and Cape Town, but there is one island called Tristan da Cunha, the inaccessible islands on the way, and they took a good look at it. Somewhere near Edinburgh of the Seven Seas up there is a cabbage patch where you could just crash an aircraft and survive if necessary. There is only one official boat into and out of Tristan da Cunha every year, and what Jean did work out is that it's got a very small and isolated population, and there are about 80 or 90 women on Tristan da Cunha. If they were stuck, that would not have seen an outside man for a good deal of time. It eventually took 27 and a half hours. First view of Table Mountain, very moving moment, and the three of us flew back up to Johannesburg. And that performance of that aircraft demonstrated to us just how well this four-seater, massively overweight. So I think the maximum weight of this aeroplane was 920 kilograms. We flew it to 1,220 kilograms. So more than a 44-gallon drum of water and a half overweight. And we went into production. We did bring our early demo aeroplane, demo four-seater, to Oshkosh the next year. This is Mike and his son. At Oshkosh, came via the Azores and Newfoundland. And then I flew that aeroplane back with an English friend of mine, Tim Parsonson, through Canada, Greenland, that's now Sassuak. We got a couple of days off there because there was bad weather on the way to Iceland. Took some of our emergency rations, flying over the 11,000 foot high ice pack, up the east coast of Greenland, and then on to Iceland. And I flew down from the UK back to South Africa with my brother Andrew over here, and went into the serious business of getting into production on Sling 4 aeroplanes. First time ever we had 12 Sling aeroplanes together in one place, and shortly after that we developed a tail dragger version of the low-wing aeroplane, and we were producing, these are two of our early four-seaters at that time. Went into, there's a great film about an adventure which we did in Namibia in, I think, 2014. I don't have a decent short of that. But what I am going to show you, this is in Namibia, nakedness again. This is the first tail dragger in Los Angeles. And around about that time, we started another project. You know, we made some very nice films, which became a nice little kind of marketing element of our business. And in 2013, we decided to do a little project which we'd make a film of, proving to the world that building an aircraft is something that is accessible. And so we built an aircraft in Johannesburg, 10 people, in 7 days, in a week.